What job has dumb people that make good money?
Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the Vancher channel. Also, please share your thoughts on this video in the comments. Let's get started.
Story 1. There's some very niche areas of commercial real estate brokerage I have experienced where people clear $500K, $1 million, and they are not what you would call smart. Edit. I should add, but they are relentless, persistent, charismatic, fully represent the interests of their clients, and are willing to take risk and have hard conversations. Be assholes if needed. Smart isn't everything. Answer. A family friend is going through this right now. His assistant, who he almost certainly had an affair with, has had him buying a number of properties for his business, and her boyfriend is taking, I think, 15 of the sales as a realtor fee or whatever. I know this isn't really the same thing and is more like embezzlement, but the fact that this is even possible is wild to me. If you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. Link is in the description. I'll show the most interesting messages in my videos. Story 2. My high school buddy is a moron, but he got into the oil drilling field. Fudge makes more than double I do. Story 3. Collectively, the dumbest group of successful people I have ever come across are in sales, or Northwestern Mutual Financial Advisor, aka insurance sales. Answer. I'm in sales, on the engineering side. I agree. One day they're making 30K YR selling cell phones. The next they're making 400K selling enterprise-wide change. DUIs are mandatory. A moderate substances habit sorta encouraged. Overconfidence is necessary. Common sense and business sense are very much not part of anyone. That all said, that's the top of the bell curve. The right side of that curve, the truly great salespeople, are by far and away some of the brightest, smartest, most self-aware, best people I've met. Story 4. Of course there are smart athletes, but there are plenty that are barely literate and make tens of millions a year. Answer. Go be a true firefighter and see if any dummy can do it. And I'm not talking some podunk volunteer fire department. Being able to read a fire and know what is going to do next if you do XYZ takes some skill, especially while being in 1200 heat in the pitch dark with very little time to make a decision. And most firemen in my area are lucky to make 60K a year to risk their lives daily just to try and save someone they don't know. Story 5. I've got a mate who is thick as a plank. He does track repairs overnight on the London Underground. He gets paid a ridiculous amount of money, and by his own admission, they work maybe 3 hours at most because they shunt the trains overnight. Story 6. Longshoremen. You have to be smart enough to not get crushed by cargo and lucky enough to get in, but darn, they make so much money, and the union is super powerful. Story 7. Politics. I've heard it referred to as Hollywood for ugly people. Some of the dumbest humans alive are elected officials. Story 8. The dumbest people with the most money I have ever met generally work in some vague finance or sales job. These fields tend to be filled by the dumbest and prettiest people I've ever seen. And to really hammer the point on that, I've worked in adult content before, and there aren't dumber people there. Answer. One of the under-recognized myths that Hollywood films have perpetuated is the image of those in finance as all brilliant prodigies, darkly intelligent and worldly. In my experience, the finance sector is heavy with people who might be good at spreadsheets, if that, but are embarrassingly ignorant and obtuse when it comes to the broader world. Whoever thought up the trope of the finance shark who quotes obscure philosophy must have been laughing all the way to the bank. Story 9. Sales. Especially sales reps who sell things to companies. I had a rep who misspelled and mispronounced my name every time I met with him, even though in Zoom and email my name is listed right there. Like Jesus, you can't even take 5 seconds to double-check spelling. Story 10. Police and military. I have an excellent pension, and my house is paid off. I'm not the brightest bulb. My colleagues were barely literate. Dumb as fudge people are cops and military. Story 11. Depends what you mean by dumb. If you mean academically dumb, sales can be a good example. You have to be socially smart to be good at it, but I work with a lot of average to below average smart people, and we all make 150K, 300K. Story 12. Sales. They can make 200,000-300,000 years easily just in IT network sales or medical device. Just a couple industries I know. Story 13. I feel bad saying this, and it might not be entirely true, but garbage people don't have to be smart, and they make decent money because nobody wants to do that job. Similar to Biffy cleaner people. Not sure if that pays well, but I assume so since it would be hard to find people. Story 14. Televangelist. I am going to revise this answer because given the demonstrations at press conferences over the past few days, September 25th, 2025, it would appear that being U.S. president is the correct answer. Story 15. So many middle managers. If your only skill kissing the boss's butt, then middle management is the place for you. Edit to add. Upper-level managers and executives fit the bill as well. I'd like to think that there are fewer idiots at the top, but the evidence doesn't support it. Story 16. Oh man, glad I can chime in on this one. I grew up in northern Indiana where frankly there is nothing but cornfields, lake-effect snow, and a proximity to Chicago and Lake Michigan. Anyways, a large number of at least the male population that I graduated high school with have worked their way up into RV manufacturing, which is about the only industry in the area. One of the guys I went to school with, who is an alcoholic, moron, makes several hundreds of thousands of dollars as an RV salesman. He travels and has a region. I get that. But realistically, he went to a community college for a business degree, interned with an RV company, and worked into an industry that exploded. And now people think he is some genius. And not just him, but others have elevated themselves into six-figure salaries within the RV industry, sales side and manufacturing manager side, in a short amount of time. Another big one in the area is car salesman, or as a trucker. Low IQ, but high payout. Story 17. Whatever the fudge is happening in crypto. I have a friend who became a millionaire because he bought a coin with a dog on it, as a joke. His entire investment strategy was, LOL, funny dog. Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to figure out my 401k and eating expired yogurt. Story 18. Government jobs. Some of the people I have worked with can barely do basic computer skills. Also, some people who work at banks. The amount of absolutely idiotic questions I've been asked is unbelievable. I helped a VP get their bank access to a website, and they didn't even know what a URL was. Story 19. Stonk market. The dumber you are, the more profitable you will be. Why is this stonk going up? Don't know. Don't care. Why are you buying this stonk? Because it's going up. Not a financial advice. Story 20. Politics. The only place where Lauren Boebert can go from twice-failed GED applicant to 8-figure net worth in just a few short years. Story 21. All of them. Just take them out of their area of expertise. To clarify, smart with their time, smart with maths, smart with decision-making, smart with relationships, smart with science, smart because they know everything, smart because they only know what's important, smart because they follow the systems, smart because they buck the systems, smart because they know what people want to hear, smart because they say what people don't want to hear, smart because they know how to grind to get things done, smart because they don't waste their time being busy. What kind of smart? Success is about matching your particular smarts and idiocies with the effort and circumstances that will reward them. Story 22. Most trades jobs, honestly. I know people who I went to high school who could barely pass a test and went to school maybe 13 of the year, who got into trades and they make a ton of money. Like they own a nice house, multiple cars, and honestly good for them. The only downside is it's so hard on your body. So either you go on disability very early on in life, or you have to switch before it ruins your body. It's not something you can do until you're at retirement age. Story 23. West Coast longshoremen. I've known a few that barely graduated high school and make north of 300K. I've also known lawyers and professors that quit their practices to become longshoremen to get out of the stress and enjoy the benefits. Keep in mind you have to get a casual card, and it takes a while. Also edit, I'm not liking calling this dumb people. Story 24. Real estate. They don't really do anything other than be available to see houses. They don't create, make, design, or engineer anything. They don't work labor, or even really know anything, or have any skill set. They are just kind of available warm bodies that take your money when you sell or buy. Story 25. This thread in comments reminds me how it confuses me so often when people act like just because a person is rich, it must mean they're some type of genius and should be listened to for advice. My opinion on one of the dumbest people alive making good money is the CEO of Tesla, who also happens to only do his job barely part-time. Story 26. ASMR mukbang TikTok live streamers. They just sit there chewing loudly into a mic, and somehow people throw them more money in one night than I make in a week at my actual job. Story 27. I think intelligence is not directly correlated to how much money you make. Luck, interpersonal skills, and tolerance for risk are what I've personally seen as the differentiating factor between those who make a lot and those who don't. For example, my smartest friends work in investment banking, consulting, PE. My wealthiest friends started businesses. Story 28. My cousin makes 6 figures working at a nuclear waste storage site. According to him, his job mostly involves driving around in a truck all day, checking that all the indicator lights are green. If one turns red, he reports it to someone. Story 29. Commercial voice acting. I've been an actor my whole life. The best Daisy-ette money I've ever made was working a few times a month for 3 to 6 hours, cranking out car commercials, phone companies, fast food, all manner of crap. I am not a smart man. Story 30. Nuclear power plants, especially in states that have low population and brain drain, they will literally hire anyone and just give them a 2-month training course. I knew a person who was a weld inspector, never welded in her life, and was considered an expert after a 2-month training course. Made over $100K a year for the lat 15 years. She also traveled to other reactors to inspect welds. Crazy jerks shoot. Story 31. Public relations. I have dealt with a fair amount of them over the years, and they are all good-looking, friendly, and charming and dumb as stumps. Their job is to make you feel at ease so you don't think about the rainforest being cut down, or lead contamination, or the ethics of landmine manufacturing, or whatever. Literal human golden retrievers. Story 32. Government jobs. At least in my experience, you cannot be fired for negligence. You can only be fired for inflammatory behavior. Story 33. I'm convinced it's all of them. I'm an attorney, and I've worked with people I'd consider good lawyers who believe that you can order children online through furniture companies, that JFK Jr. was going to rise from the dead to say Trump really did win, or that they actually have a shot at winning the lottery. The profession is usually considered smart due to the amount of schooling, but plenty of the people are still different shades of idiot. They just happen to be okay enough at school. Story 34. Any job that abuses your body. Welder, plumber, electrician, construction, machining, etc. These guys make decent money, but they can hardly do anything after their 50s or 60s because of arthritis or worse. Story 35. Executive management, CEOs, etc. You will not find a group of collectively dumber people on the planet. Story 36. Any trade has a lot. Not all, but I find it more common than not they're experts in one field and mouth breathers otherwise. Story 37. I work with a bunch of dummies, and we all make 6 figures. Gasoline delivery, everyone owns their own truck. That's 6 figures after expenses and taxes. Story 38. Corporate IT. It's a wonder anything ever works. And I say this as a 40-year resident of the IT trenches, so I'm probably blind to most of it. Story 39. Truck drivers. My co-workers and I all make over 6 figures, but goddarn there's some stupid motherfuckers in this lot. Story 40. I'm a union millwright. Base wages are almost $80K, and realistically with overtime, some scheduled, some voluntary, $120 to $130K is easily doable, plus a full pension, zero-cost healthcare, and a bunch of other benefits and perks. Story 41. Influencers, models. I was watching Project Runway, and I couldn't help but to tell my family how I see all male models as Derek Zoolander. On the one hand, I respect them for staying in shape and hanging out with female models and actually working. But among the working people, I sort of respect them the least, i.e., I respect that they are working, but I laugh at their job. Story 42. If you're attractive, you can earn a lot. HR, sales, modeling, actor, actress, high-end adult worker, etc. Story 43. Construction. You don't need more than 2 brain cells to move heavy thing from one side of the room to the other, and you can get paid 50, 60, 70 an hour with basic training and a little schmoozing. Actually, if you can schmooze, it doesn't matter how rock dumb you are, LOL. Lots of examples in real life. Story 44. Car sales for sure. You don't have to be intelligent to sell there, but you do need a hard work ethic and are prepared to have a shoot work-life balance. Story 45. Sales, but not totally dumb people. Just people who don't do much reflecting. Easy to screw people over if you aren't totally cognizant of your employer's grift. Story 46. Advertising. I know firsthand. Truly, there are some really stupid people in advertising who have made a shoot ton of money. IYKYK. Story 47. Real estate agents. Some are amazing, but I've met a few who couldn't find their own listing without GPS and still cash huge commission checks. Story 48. Internet content creator. Real jobs, sales. Most brain-dead people I've ever seen, but their lack of a soul and ability to find other brain-dead hooligans can make them bank. Story 49. Sales. All you have to do to succeed is just not be scared to talk to strangers. Any dummy can do that, and some of the most successful people I've met and worked with in sales are absolutely morons. Story 50. Sales. Any sales. Tech sales. I've met the dumbest people in tech sales making like 300, 400K a year. They talk their ears off, don't listen, but they bring the... Story 51. Sales. I swear I've met some of the most clueless people absolutely raking it in just because they're confident and talk a lot. Story 52. Economists. The current U.S. administration is filled with economists. RFK Jr. is one. Besant is one. Lutnick is one. They're all economists. They all have multiple degrees. They're all dumber than fudge rocks. They're all pulling in 6 or 7 figure salaries. Story 53. Project managers. They just go around asking everyone if their work is done yet, so they can mark it as done on their bullshit calendar, LMAO. Story 54. People will say sales and trades most likely. Any field where you have to work really hard and be sociable is where dumb people do well, though you could argue that they're just smart in a different way than academia celebrates. Story 55. I think this question reveals something deeper about how we value different types of intelligence in society. The top answers here: sales, real estate, oil drilling, often require skills that don't show up on standardized tests, but are incredibly difficult to master. Take sales, for example. Sure, some salespeople might struggle with academic subjects, but the ability to read people, build genuine rapport, handle constant rejection, and adapt your communication style on the fly, that's a form of intelligence that many smart people completely lack. I've seen software engineers with advanced degrees who couldn't convince their own family to try a new restaurant. The real issue isn't that these jobs attract dumb people. It's that our education system and cultural biases have created this artificial hierarchy where only certain types of problem solving are considered intelligent. Meanwhile, someone who can negotiate million-dollar deals or manage complex logistics in dangerous conditions gets labeled as intellectually inferior. Maybe we should be asking why so many traditionally smart career paths pay less than these supposedly dumb ones. It might say more about what society actually values than we're comfortable admitting. Story 56. I always find title companies so useless. They are the middlemen who have placed themselves in middle of processes without adding any value or producing anything. Story 57. Any corporate-level office position. Nothing like making the worst decisions ever that are going to make the bottom of the company struggle to work and be happy while you sit in your nice, cushy office chair, making triple what those below you do and not contributing a single skill set to society. Story 58. Conversely, a job where you have to be really FK King smart, skilled and brave, but where you get paid very poorly is astronaut. Story 59. The Army. Has smart people too, but plenty of dumb ones, and it pays well after the first few years. Story 60. Politics. There are certain positions that only require you to shut up, vote the way someone else tells you to vote, and it's done. Be quiet, vote, and collect your payment. Just pray that no one asks you anything at all. Story 61. It's definitely politics and influencers, which are slowly becoming the same thing over time, it seems. Story 62. All the beauty-based jobs. Not that they are all dumb, but it is a place where dumb doesn't matter much if you have a trusted advisor manager. Sports. Many professional sports pay very well, and many of the sports don't require great intelligence. Of course, most people who want to do these things fail. Too much supply. Most of the people who commit to trying these things fail. The few who make it to be professionals don't usually make great money, but a few of the few do. Story 63. Lots of real estate jobs. Agents, mortgage brokers. I've met a lot of them. They're not like drooling idiots, but they have a very basic grasp of the content of what they're working in, and instead are aggressive at marketing themselves and closing sales. Those qualities go a long way where there are a lot of service providers, and it's not at all clear what makes someone better except for their client base. Then you see a trend where the handful of successful ones get really successful because they have a momentum thanks to word of mouth and the effect of a large client base referring others. Story 64. Politics. Not being facetious or anything, but elected officials just have to win a popularity contest, not actually have any qualifications or anything. Story 65. The vast majority of fools with money are so by inheritance. Then you have the crypto bros who scam all the kids. Then the gym bro who also scam men with no self-esteem. Then the OnlyFanners who take advantage of wankers. And then the dealers from high places who supply the noses of all those daddy and mommy children with Nero pretensions. Story 66. Executives. In every company I've worked for the last 30 years. Well, maybe dumb is not quite it. Cutthroat, bus-throwing under unethical assholes who don't know how to do any actual work is closer to the mark. Story 67. Firemen. The groupthink. The cattiness. I swear most of us were undiagnosed autistics. There is no other industry where the Dunning-Kruger effect is so represented. I don't so much save lives, rather I dive in the path of the Darwinism. Story 68. Republican, senator, talking head, cabinet member, secretary of shit. All you gotta do is be okay with a convicted criminal at the head of the org and be in on the take. Story 69. Basically every job. The longer you work and live, the more you realize that range of human capability is narrower than any of us want to admit. The median is pretty darn modest, and the ceiling is not terribly high. Story 70. Nurses. Y'all would be shocked at how many nurses are thick as a brick with little to no common sense or critical thinking. I'm shocked constantly. Story 71. Adult content. Because most of the women are sold a dream and dumb enough to believe and don't think what repercussions they will have in future for them and their kids. Story 72. College NFL football coaches. I mean, seriously, do you see what assistant position coaches actually make? Answer. Maybe a hot take. I am biased as a former college football player, but IMO, coaches are either exceedingly stupid with an unexplainable aptitude for schemes and strategy, or they're absolutely brilliant in ways that would probably shock you. I played college football and am now in my 4th year of a chemistry PhD at a large state R1, and most of my coaches were way more intelligent than the average PhD student. Story 73. Law enforcement. Many of the low level, but plenty of the upper tier too. Many dim bulbs and often very ethically, morally challenged. Story 74. Don't know if it is true or not, but it has always been roofers, if you just went by what the general population thinks. Story 75. Sales. You do not have to be a brain trust to sell people things, and I'm not knocking sales. It was good as hell to me, but I'm just average intelligence, and I never could have been something like a doctor. Story 76. Social media influencers. You don't need a lot of brains, just a phone and some audacity, then you're good. Story 77. Sales is notorious. Sales drive revenue, so salespeople get paid well. Usually no education required. Story 78. Real estate agents, for sure. They do a job that used to have real value before the internet. They used to have to know people, be up to date on listings, have relationships. Now I can do most of that on the internet. Plus, they still make 3 of the sale price of the house, even as housing has gone through the roof over the past 15 years. They make way more money than they used to for doing less work. Story 79. Car sales for sure, including the finance managers. It's really not fair. The staff on the service side work longer hours, have it much harder, deal with the dry customers, go to school to become a mechanic and make far less than sales. Story 80. Real estate and construction. No shade at construction work at all, but for my personal experience, I've seen some dumb people make a lot of money and be separated from it nearly as fast. Story 81. Entry-level maintenance makes good money, but doesn't require much education. Getting specialized takes a ton of education and training, but not in academia. So I guess it depends on what you mean in your original question. Story 82. Aviation. I work with some really sharp pilots, but also some of the absolute dumbest people I've ever met in my life. Story 83. I've never worked anywhere that didn't have dumb people. Every level and every role has at least some unqualified idiots who manage to worm their way there. Story 84. Sales, especially auto sales. Over 30 years in the dealership business, parts, service departments. And I can surely say the lowest IQ in any building I've worked in was up in the showroom. Story 85. Real estate, whole life insurance sales, sales in general.
Some influencers, but that one needs an asterisk by it. Politics. Most failed finance or econ bros I went to college with are Northwestern Mutual Financial Advisors. They sell insurance. Story 86. In all fairness, only a fraction of realtors are successful. The rest are either too stupid, too incompetent, or too lazy to find success. Story 87. Government jobs of any kind, including holding office. I swear the dumbest mofos I have ever met all work for the government or in politics. Story 88. Most salespeople. I'm in IT, so I have worked with a lot of sales guys at VARs over the last 20 years. I also have friends in sales. While I love those guys, I can't believe they get paid to do those jobs. They don't really even do anything. They'll reach out to their customers or get a call and put meetings together with SMEs on a product and sit on calls. Then the vendor SME tells them what to build a quote with and they send an email. Or they'll take clients out to lunch dinner to talk about projects or whatever. That's about it. And some of them make like $200K. It's ridiculous. Story 89. Sales, sales, sales. A close friend of mine in sales earns more through commission than a heart surgeon I know. He's not at all very smart either. Story 90. I've had some very smart, totally underemployed admin assistants, but I've also had some that made me wonder how they managed to follow the plot of sitcoms. Story 91. Professional athletes. My time in corporate America taught me VP and up are not that bright most of the time. There are a lot of traits more important for financial success in business than intelligence. Story 92. Hopefully my comment makes it up high. Large diameter pipelining. Zero education required. 18 years old, straight into a 100K income a year. Equipment operators push 160 to 220K a year, and foreman higher-ups are well above 300K a year with superintendents, and project managers receiving job bonuses of 250K alone for large 9 to 12-month projects. Foremen typically make a daily rate of $1,300 to $2,400, depending on the type of crew they run. Additionally, they make roughly 30 to 60K a year of tax-free living allowance income, which is far more than needed for food and living on the road. Story 93. Some tradespeople are really good at what they do and make a lot of money. They also piss in bottles and leave the bottle in the walls. Story 94. Dumb question. There are many kinds of intelligence. The so-called smart people with exemplary academic skills and achievements can lack other types of intelligence that can make them successful. People skills, emotional skills, problem-solving skills, decisiveness, moral intelligence. It's not nearly as simple as, wow, what a whiz. Story 95. Pharmacy reps. They're not hired for what they know. They're the booth babes and dudes of the medical field. Story 96. Lately HR. I tried reaching out to a place for an application question and no response. I tried to another, no response. I got told I'm not a good fit for a role, despite my experience and qualifications for that role, specifically. HR man, HR. Story 97. Lawyers. I've worked at law firms, and while they know a lot about their particular area of law, they don't seem to understand very simple things like accessing emails or websites. Very strange. Story 98. Almost the entire section of ATLs in the film industry. IYKYK. This industry, above all, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's really got to be extraordinary circumstances to be fired. Story 99. This will sound like an attack, but many trade jobs. I have personally known many people that get paid into the six figures that cannot read and have the spelling level of their fourth grade kids. Story 100. Dumb question. There are many kinds of intelligence. The so-called smart people with exemplary academic skills and achievements can lack other types of intelligence that can make them successful. People skills, emotional skills, problem-solving skills, decisiveness, moral intelligence. It's not nearly as simple as, wow, what a whiz. Story 101. Reading through these comments, I think people are just confusing street smarts versus book smarts. It's unusual to have both, but those that do are usually the most successful. That said, many occupations have people with only street smarts thriving, while those with only book smarts struggle. Story 102. Can you define your measure of dumb here? People can be good at stuff in a way that is different from the way you're good at stuff, but that doesn't mean they're dumb. I think a lot of the jobs mentioned here may popularly be thought of as dumb in the sense of like IDK,
not good at Jeopardy or something. But in my experience, most people earning good money are doing so because they have skills. Even outright fraudsters and con men may not be skilled at the thing they pretend they are skilled in, but they are skilled in the thing that truly matters to them, doing crime to get your money. I am a software engineer, and I work with a lot of very smart people, fancy colleges, math Olympiad winners, etc., many of whom would absolutely fall on their face if they had to take a large prospect through an entire sales cycle, with sales being mentioned here as being full of dumb people. There are lots of jobs where people can be said to fit some definition of dumb, depending on your metric. I think there are very few jobs that pay good money where the people does not have skills to justify that money. Story 103. Working for GM in the UAW. They make 6 figures easy before overtime, plus free health and in great retirement match. Story 104. Most companies that allow nepotism for the bulk of their hiring have a crap ton of lazy idiots working for them. Story 105. Maybe my thought is biased, but man, you get some people in construction who you don't know how they made it this far in life. People are here listing jobs with college degrees. You at least need book smarts for a degree but can lack common sense. You don't need either of those in construction. Sometimes you say something and you can just see the gears aren't turning in their head and they just stare back blank. You can do the same basic thing day after day for a month and they still just don't know the next step. These guys can make $75K on a normal year, and if they work OT, can clear 6 figures. One guy who was constantly made fun of for being dumb actually pulled in $140K the one year with working every day for half the year. He put in 70 hours every week that year, but still. Story 106. Honestly, every job. My former sister-in-law is an anesthesiologist, makes crazy money, super smart when it comes to anesthesiology, but dumber than a box of rocks with everything else. Story 107. Run-of-the-mill fitness instructors. I feel like there is a low intelligence requirement to enter the field. Story 108. It would be a shorter list to ask which jobs don't have dumb people that make good money. Have you been out in public lately? Story 109. Taxi driving, especially if where you live hasn't been taken over by Uber. Source. Am a taxi driver. I just attempt to do it with some ethics, unlike others who couldn't give a flying fudge about who they take, as long as they get paid. If I even suspect you're doing a substances or money run, you're not welcome in my car. Story 110. Car sales. Enough cocaine in most dealerships that if they were on a boat, the U.S. would shoot at them, LOL. Story 111. Politics. People who get in to just line their own pockets are some of the dumbest. Can't see past my own nose MFers. Story 112. Politicians. Most of them just follow the leader and have never had an original thought once in their entire lives. Story 113. Where I work, you can get paid up to $35 an hour and don't need anything more than HS, and you don't need to be smart either. Story 114. Such folks could be found anywhere. They can be anything they want to be, as long as they have good social skills, good looks, the right people pulling for them, or at least one of these things, if not all. I will say that I haven't actually met a lot of dumb people, so much as morally malfunctioning and foolish people. Many were quite intelligent. Story 115. All of them. America is not about what you know or how good you are at something. It is about what you can sell, be it an item or yourself. There are people that pretended to be CEOs and doctors who had no formal education and got away with it for years. Story 116. The two N's, nepotism and networking. If you don't do either, you will have to be very overqualified to compete. Story 117. This is a hot take, and I'm not talking about really dumb people. But I went to a top-ranked engineering school, and a lot of the dumbest people at my school were in biotech. There were plenty of smart people in it too, but it was the, if you can't do a real engineering degree. Story 118. Any type of sales. The salesmen at my office can't even work the door on their own, much less a computer, but they make tons of money being swarmy and charming. Story 119. Truck driving. You don't need much skill, but make good money relative to the difficulty of the job. And this is someone speaking as a truck driver. Story 120. Finance. They clearly have no idea what they're doing. As a group, we have to bail them out every few years. Story 121. Nepotism. Manager. Responsibilities include existing, showing up late and taking credit for other people's work. Salary. 6 figures. Story 122. Sales. God, it's insane. So many successful morons. But if you ask sales, they are successful because they are so smart. Story 123. Ocean oil rig. My cousin is law functioning but pulling down 6 figures. His coworkers say he's crazy, fearless, and fast, which is more important. Story 124. Cybersecurity. I know people forwarding emails with security flags, then making like $130K a year doing nothing. Story 125. Sales. Any sales job is full of people who have no fudge idea about the company. They're idiot savants. Story 126. Qualifications to be good in sales real estate. Be hot. Overconfidence. This is usually packaged with being hot. If you're extroverted, even better. Story 127. Anyone in upper-level management, IMHO. Even a lot of business owners. It's astounding that more businesses don't go under, to be honest. Story 128. Car sales. High school education rarely a requirement. Many can pull 6 figures. Some pull quarter millions. Opportunity to move up also brings higher pay. That being said, many people fall flat on their face, and it takes a very particular set of skills to succeed in sales. Car sales. Story 129. C-level execs. It's a good old boys club. When the AI bubble bursts, none of these decision makers investing billions in AI at a loss will face any consequences. Story 130. I worked at a creative agency for a year, and my boss was such a dumbass. Completely driven by ego, no clue how to run her own company, constantly said problematic things regarding race and tokenized employees. Shot down a campaign pitch I had, which ultimately another agency did, and it's a huge campaign now. Tried to get new business by talking about business she lost. Insane. Couldn't spell for shoot and advised her employees to use AI. Dumbest person I ever worked for. Story 131. Financial advisors. I help them open accounts and we have to collect the client's mother's maiden name for a security question. And I have been asked multiple times what a mother's maiden name is. They are some of the dumbest people I've ever met, and they make 3x as much as I do. Upwards of $150K a year. Story 132. Any job that makes money. There are many jobs that require advanced skills, problem solving, and intelligence. Intelligent people want those jobs. They want them because they want to do them. They want them for the challenge and satisfaction. They want to be compensated, but their motivation is to put their intelligence to use. Often the compensation isn't the best when factoring in the ambitious of training, schooling, and experience required. Jobs that make a lot of money do so because they make a lot of money. Suppose you give a guy 100 and next week he's made 200. You might give him 10 for his trouble. Now scale that up to thousands or millions of dollars. People who like to make money rarely care how or what the work is. They're not going to solve complicated problems because that takes time and doesn't make a profit. They're going to figure out what is the quickest, easiest, and most profitable thing to do. Do that and move on to the next thing. Story 133. Influencers for sure. It's bizarre. Creating meaningless content to waste people's time and getting paid for it is either brilliant or degenerate, possibly both, LOL. Story 134. I feel like dumb is subjective to what each person considers dumb. Maybe a job that doesn't require a higher level of education would be plumbers and long-distance truck drivers. I've heard they make a surprisingly comfortable income. Story 135. This is gonna sound funny, but rocket scientists, they have zero self-awareness and common sense. They are single-minded and focused on one aspect of the situation or job and not the full picture. I work with a bunch of them. They act like children and expect others to cater to them. They want others to clean up their messes. I work monitoring clean rooms. I'm not their maid, yet they think because I work monitoring the clean rooms, I must clean them and pick up after them. I don't do that. It's not my job. Clean up after yourselves. I don't know if that counts as dumb or something else. To me, it's pretty dumb. Also, some of them are truly really dumb when it comes to things other than rocket science. Story 136. Depends what your idea of good money is, I guess. Probably all of them. I used to work in retail. The higher up the chain people were, the dumber they were. I used to work in warehousing. Same thing. So corporate level management seems to be a pretty good job for a dumb person to get into. Story 137. I've been in IT for a long time, and there are lots of people doing IT jobs that don't know anything, and they are making big bucks. Story 138. Truck drivers. You don't need any skill apart of driving license, and money, especially in Europe, is very decent. Story 139. Retired technical sales guy here, and hands down, salespeople. The moronic business speak alone made me want to gouge my eardrums out. Some people think using business lingo makes them appear smarter, when in fact, the opposite is true. Story 140. Not what you're looking for, but some of my civil engineering coworkers are some of the smartest people I've ever met and get paid just okay. Story 141. Unrelated, but adding just BC, male software engineers. They all seem to overdrink. Unsure if it's neurodivergent masking, but near all of them. I've known, dated multiple. Two men can be very different, but they drink and get snarky, emotional, and/or toxic in behavior. The most universal thing I've noticed about any gender in any white-collar career. Story 142. Apparently in the current White House, I've never seen a collective group of unqualified individuals in one job force. Story 143. Honestly, real estate agents. I've met some who are super smart and hardworking, but also a shocking amount who barely know how contracts work and still rake in huge commissions. Story 144. Servers and bartenders in Canada. Here it's not like the States where tipped workers make a super low minimum wage. Servers here make the typical minimum wage, 15 hours. And most places the servers make most of their own tips, with a small portion of it pooled for kitchen hosts. So servers here can easily make $100, $200 night or more, plus their hourly wage. I was a server after my first year of university and honestly did not think I deserved to be making that kind of money. And many servers are obviously alcoholics and dumb. Side story. It's been 2 years since that job, and I heard my boyfriend's bartender roommate complaining about making only 200 tips during a 6-hour night. I was livid. I work as an electrical engineering intern in oil and gas, and 200 plus 6 hours minimum wage is more than I make in a 9-to-5 day. P.S. If you're in Canada, don't ever let anyone guilt you in tipping more than 15. Story 145. I think it depends on what you mean by dumb. If someone is successful, they're likely not dumb at the thing they're doing, but might be dumb at other stuff. I knew people would say sales, but there are brilliant people who would be terrible at sales. I know many doctors who are very, very smart, but then so dumb socially. Story 146. Insurance. 2008 wouldn't have happened if they weren't. Simply get out of the market of insuring mortgage loans, or talking to Congress, or just anybody would have been a very good canary in the coal mine, as the whole point of insurance is to mitigate financial risk. Farts at AI just decided to cover whatever came through their door and expected a bailout afterwards. Fuckers screwed up so bad the sloth, that is the US federal government, said, "We're buying the dip." Story 147. Honestly, have seen people in real estate and sales make crazy money without being the smartest in the room. It's more about confidence and connections than brains. Story 148. I'm not in sales, and I would never want to be. Being a techie myself, I have kind of an anti-sales prejudice, thinking that they're not intelligent, but that's not always the case. It takes a certain kind of emotional IQ and cunning to sell sand to a Saudi or ice to an Eskimo. Story 149. You can walk in and get a job paying $37 an hour on the spot at the road marking companies. It's very dangerous work. Story 150. Speaking of sales, does anyone have recommendations of companies or types of sales I could get into with only 9 months experience? Story 151. Doctors. Talented and hopefully knowledgeable about their field, but capable of incredible stupidity for everything else. I did 10 years in healthcare on the corporate side, and the number of doctors telling me how to do my job when they didn't have a clue what I did. Look, dude, I don't tell you how to treat cancer. Stop telling me how to do my job. Story 152. Corporate marketing. But you need to be attractive and preferably blonde or know someone. That is usually where they dump the nepos and mistresses. Story 153. In my experience, most executives are disconnected from reality and genuinely quite dumb. They surround themselves with smart people, take credit for their work, and get rewarded with tons of money. Story 154. Personal injury attorneys. Not all, but the bottom half of the crop are either dumb as fudge or lazy as fudge. Story 155. Professional athletes. Very good at whatever sport they play, but man, do they always seem dumb as a rock. Story 156. I've encountered some really dumb people that work for our state government. I worked for an insurance company that had QTRLY meetings at the state with other insurance companies. These meetings were such a cluster. I remember the first one I attended. The state employee who had some management role was leading the meeting. She kept talking about Cindy, as in, Cindy doesn't like this, or Cindy wants you to do this, etc. It was near the end of the meeting when it dawned on me she was talking about herself. Her name was Cindy. She spent the whole meeting talking about herself in third person. It was so bizarre. Story 157, contractor jobs. I knew an idiot who could barely read, and he had his own business for like 10 years. It struggled the whole time until out of nowhere it blew up. He lives in a huge house on a beautiful property with a beautiful family now. Story 158, mine. IT strategist. I explained to executives that many of their current problems are the result of not listening to my previous advice. Then I give them fresh new advice that they will ignore. Rinse and repeat. Answer. Sounds like a tax and wealth planner. Only a handful of our clients listen to the advice they hired us to give them. They ask what happened, why things aren't going the way they wanted, and we have to tell them in the most polite way imaginable. Well, you didn't pay your estimates that we created for you. You sold too many assets when we told you not to, and you told us your vacation was a business expense, even though we told you it wasn't. Clients often leave happy, but with a renewed sense of, I'm going to follow your advice this time. Then they don't, and we do it all over again next year. Some of our clients hire us to do everything for them, but that's a different service entirely and more expensive. Story 159. One of my buddies just sits in a server room, and sometimes a server starts to beep because it turned off. He goes and pushes the button to turn it back on, and goes back to playing video games. Story 160. Real estate agents, especially for multi-million-dollar homes. A lawyer can write up the contract and have both people sign, and you won't pay 3/6 for it. Answer. Like all professions, there are good ones and bad ones. I do home inspections as a side job, and some agents I've worked with are the worst useless fudge on the planet, with rich parents expecting people to just throw money at them. The bad ones on the buyer's end will try to get their clients to buy the worst piece of shoot houses as fast as possible, and then get mad at me when I inform the buyer of major problems that need addressed, because that means they'll have to actually do their jobs. On the seller's end, they'll just list the house on Zillow, Robin, or whatever, and send someone else to go and unlock doors for tours. However, some of the kindest, hardworking people I've met are real estate agents too. There's a handful I work with a lot that would spend a lot of time doing yard work, paint the interior, foot the bill for repairs, stage the house, and really do what is best for their client. I've noticed that it's not even an agent-by-agent basis, but more of different offices, even under the same company, as a whole are generally far better than others. The best advice I could give to people looking to hire an agent is to ask friends, family, or co-workers who recently bought sold houses and see if they like theirs, because a few of the worst I've ever worked with had glowing reviews online that I suspect are 90 bots and 9.9 friends and family with handful of bad reviews being actual clients. With all that being said, I'd say it's about a 7,030 split of bad to good ones in my experience. Story 161. I'm a senior project manager for the largest renewables company in the USA, and I have to tell you, I do maybe like 10 real work hours a week. I dislike my job and the people I work with, but I got handcuffs for 3 years, paid for me to move to SF, and monster signing bonus. I make less than 200 and more than 150, have pretty much zero responsibility for anything that goes wrong or well. Directors take the fall at a company of this size. Answer. Directors take the fall at a company of this size. I laughed at this. If I had been drinking, I would have snorted. I was retired and IT director. The directors at my last company were commonly told that we ran the company on a day-to-day basis, except we didn't, because we could not do anything significant without the executive team signing on off it. And their sign-off had to be essentially unanimous, or they had consensus. Glad to be retired and out of corporate America. Story 162. Car dealerships. They're basically an artificial choke point between you and the company that actually makes the product you want. God knows Elon Musk is problematic in a lot of ways, but I fully support his vision to make direct-to-customer sales the industry standard. Story 163. Security. I was making $25 an hour to do literally nothing, and in case something did happen, we were instructed to just call the police. Story 164. Manager. I feel like I'm getting paid too much for what I do. My team members work a lot harder and get paid less. Answer. Don't undersell how many of us don't want to or suck at dealing with other humans. My manager did all the meetings, and his manager was the one who would do the painful social interaction work of getting other teams to coordinate with us. Not skills I have, and the job would have been nightmare fuel for me. Even if you're a manager of like a fast food joint, your peeps don't want to do paperwork and scheduling and the like. Story 165. Don't know if it's useless, but you can earn 100K a year cleaning toilets in Australia if you do it on a mine site. Story 166. I moan on a microphone just so that some drawings of naked people can have a voice. How is that useful to society? I have no idea. Do I like my job? Fudge, yes. I make more than 2 times the salary of my high school teachers who told me that leaving school was a bad idea. Story 167. Influencers, I would probably say. They aren't useless, but the job itself seems pretty useless, so I guess they are useless. Story 168. Stockbroker. Edit, not all brokers are bad. Hedge fund manager. Almost no one has ever outpaced a diversified, broad-spectrum index fund consistently over a period of time longer than like 10 years. Check out the book, A Random Walk Down Wall Street. It gets into how unlikely it is that a managed fund would be worth the fees, commissions of the brokers. Answer. That's true for the average hedge fund, but the top funds destroy the market. Tepper, Griffin, Druckenmiller, D.E. Shaw, Soros, Dalio. For example, there's also a quant hedge fund that averaged 60 for 30 years, which I forget. Druckenmiller averaged 30 for 30 years, no negatively returning years. I agree that most people should be in low-cost public equities, but it's just not true that there is no value in a good fund manager. Story 169. The guy that holds your male body part while you piss. It's why I like to piss at home. I can hold my own male body part. Story 170. Most HR positions. I feel as though many corporations could eliminate 90 of their HR department. The only noticeable difference would be a reduction in pointless emails. Answer. Who do you think deals with employee concerns and filters their whining and position pitch them as reasonable and actionable items to the management? I feel like HR employees always struggle with visibility and impact, but imagine having to deal with people all the time. I can't even stand most people at work. Imagine how HR people do that as career day in and day out. Story 171. Almost any HR job. Too much redundancy and unnecessary personnel. The ones that actually do the work suffer. Story 172. Well, if you ever watch House Hunters, you'll see couples who have jobs like a butterfly therapist and a used spoon trader who say their budget is like $3 million. Story 173. Consultant, getting paid 4 figures a day to fly around the world to tell people what they could research online. Story 174. Being the boss's nephews on whatever. There's always that one guy who has some nonsense title, doesn't do much, but is related to management, so he's left to do whatever, collect the check. Story 175. Should read, Bullshit Jobs for David Graeber. He contends that over half of societal jobs are pointless. Story 176. 70 of tech jobs are useless and pay a lot, although the industry's bleeding app, so maybe less true as time goes on. Story 177. Real estate agents. Yes, they offer a service, and yes, it's beneficial, but the paycheck they get for selling a single home can be staggering and likely close to a full year's salary for some people. Good agents will sell 10 or more homes in a year and can make an absolutely ludicrous amount of money for filling out a few forms. I'll bet you that the right house in a hot market could earn an agent close to $50K for a few hours' work. Story 178. TSA. If they had ever stopped a credible threat, we wouldn't stop hearing about it. The CrossFit of security. Answer. That's a logical fallacy. We can't know what incidents were prevented by virtue of would-be terrorists knowing they'd be stopped if they tried. Thing doesn't occur isn't a news story. Yes, the TSA is largely security theater. Yes, they have had terrible performance tests where they miss many threats. But implying they've never stopped a threat is like saying the security at Lakers games is useless
because they've never stopped anyone from running onto the court during a game and tackling LeBron James. Someone who would be motivated to do that would also know that there's a pretty good chance they'd be stopped by security. You can make strong arguments about the TSA's effectiveness, but you can't quantify what threats they prevented by virtue of their presence, because something not happening is not quantifiable. Story 179. Life coaches. Now, not all of them technically make a lot of money, but a friend of a friend is a life coach, and she literally just reposts motivational quotes and pictures of herself on a beach somewhere exotic. Whatever she gets paid, it lets her keep a cushy apartment in NYC and travel abroad several times a year. Story 180. Administrative assistant. I did that during the pandemic since my usual job laid me off for all work sites shutting down. I was busy for all of 2 hours of an 8-hour day, spent the rest of the day browsing the internet and shopping online. LOL. Story 181. Diversity Vice President at University. It is a useless position for a problem that could be easily solved if universities wanted to do it. Do you know why universities in Europe, not including the UK, are quite diverse? There is nothing subjective about choosing the applicants. Most countries have national exams at core subjects, and with these results, plus their high school grades, everything get inserted into a formula, and you get ranked at national level. Universities have a number of vacancies per degree, and applicants rank their choices. An algorithm distributes the students based on the national ranking and the order of their choices. The result is a naturally diverse university system. Answer. While this sounds like a good system, it relies on all students having the same learning opportunities in high school and earlier. You are unlikely to score well on a national exam if you never received instruction in the subjects assessed by the exam. In the USA, some public school systems are excellent, and others are pipelines to prison. Access to the excellent schools often requires living in an affluent city or neighborhood. Therefore, children of poor immigrants and children in marginalized groups often end up in the school-to-prison pipeline. There are places in the USA that work well. I taught 8th grade science for 3 years in a school district with open admissions. Students anywhere in the district could attend any of the 6 public middle schools and 4 public high schools. Almost 30 of students were children of migrant farm workers learning English as a second language. The school district is one of the best in the nation, with high test scores, almost 100 graduation rate, extensive AP programs, etc. There is a high school not far from where I live now that has a 60 graduation rate. That's right, 40 of students don't graduate. How can such a school be allowed to remain open? What chance of performing well on a national test do the 40 have? The high school serves 190 students in grades 7-12. The high school placed in the bottom 50 of all schools in Ohio for overall test scores. Math proficiency is bottom 50, and reading proficiency is bottom 50 for the 2020-21 school year. The percentage of students achieving proficiency in math is 5, which is lower than the Ohio State average of 50. For the 2020-21 school year, the percentage of students achieving proficiency in reading language arts is 20, which is lower than the Ohio State average of 57 for the 2020-21 school year. The student-teacher ratio of 17:1 is equal to the Ohio State level of 17:1. Minority enrollment is 61 of the student body, majority Black, which is higher than the Ohio State average of 33, majority Black. The graduation rate of the high school is 60, which is lower than the Ohio State average of 84. Annual expenditure per student is $11,330. The Ohio average expenditure per high school students, $11,306. Story 182. Minors coordinator on television sets. You get paid to start a timer and warn people when the timer's going to run out. Story 183. Although not fully useless, I think house sitting is one. I understand the reason, but if you're rich enough to have a theft risk type house, then you can afford a good security system. Just don't post everything on social media and you should be good. Story 184. Valet. 100 luxury service that absolutely no one really needs done for them. There are places where the valets make 6 figures for a job that requires 0 skills and about an hour of training. Story 185. I'm a lead manufacturing engineer. 5 hours of my 8 5-hour shift consist of Reddit or YouTube with subtitles, 60-ish. Story 186.
That one old British job to wake people up in the morning by tapping on their windows with a large stick. Story 187. I would say being an employee of Twitter, but Elon Musk fired most of its employees, and it's now called X, apparently. Story 188. Most lead positions or supervisor positions in factories like the ones I've worked at. Some pay upwards of 25 to 30 an hour to walk around and do basically nothing. I think the only time I saw a supervisor work at my last job was when OSHA showed up for a walkthrough. Story 189. Car salesman. And car dealerships as a whole. There was once a time you could buy straight from the manufacturer and just pay the price of the vehicle. But they lobbied for that to go away, and now you have to buy from a dealership and accept all their fees, upcharges, warranty, etc. Story 190. Politics-based roles. We pay them a fortune here in Victoria, AUS, but they never seem to instill community-based policies. Weirdly, they seem to be paid under the table by big corporations to lobby specific things. It's just so strange. S on that last part. Story 191. My job is parking attendant. We literally just tell people where to park. Everything else is done through an app. Story 192. University vice presidents and similar high-level officials. Their jobs are to provide signatures on documents that usually have 6 prior signatures, only 1 or 2 of which are actually needed. Story 193. Actors and entertainment industry big shots. Listen, entertainment and arts are important. It's what helps keep you sane during life. But paying someone $80 million for making a movie is batshit insane, no matter how you cut it. Story 194. All the investor finance bro types. That type of shoot is just insane. They make a ton of money, it seems like, but I just could never do that crap. Story 195. Most general management is useless. If the management of your company goes on vacation, you will never notice. If even one person in tech support or systems management or storage goes on vacation, it will halt everything until they get back. Story 196. Professional athletes in entertainment leagues like NBA, NHL, NFL, PGA, MLB. I love competitive professional sports, but athletes shouldn't be making millions of dollars while teachers are using the food bank. Answer. Here's the thing. Those leagues and those teams make insane amounts of money off tickets and advertising and various other things from fans and viewers. That money in turn has to go somewhere, and I'd much rather it go to the performers, athletes the fans are actually paying to see than a bunch of C-suite execs and shareholders, which it would otherwise go to. Story 197. Project management. If you've ever worked in IT as an admin or developer, you know how clueless and useless these empty suits are. Story 198. Actors. They think they are gods, but they just play pretend for a living. Most of them are just idiots that got lucky. Story 199. Recruitment talent. They are the in-between person from a candidate to a hiring manager. The recruiter screening process is almost always redundant to the interview with the hiring manager. They are not reading resumes as much as you would think. Most of the day is spent in phone screens, asking the same questions that a hiring manager would ask during an interview. Story 200. CEOs do literally nothing but get paid obscene amounts of money to meanie about the company needing to make more money. Story 201. Asking this question over and over again on Ask Reddit. I don't actually know if it pays well, but it gets asked every 3 minutes, so I'm guessing y'all are making a decent living from it. Story 202. Any job that's purpose is taking resources that should be commons and getting them into the hands of private capitalists. Story 203. Professional athletes. They literally get paid tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to just play sports purely for entertainment. And mega corporations capitalize off of the general public by charging hundreds, even thousands for tickets and 50 for a hot dog and a beer. Story 204. Cybersecurity. You pay someone $300 per hour to give you a 5-page report that says, don't click on links in emails. Story 205. Bankers and traders. We make money by moving around and gambling with other people's money. When we mess up and lose it all, the government gives us even more of other people's money. Story 206. I'm currently a release engineer. My job is basically making sure the designers, development engineers, manufacturing engineers, and service engineers all do their jobs. If they could perfectly communicate, then my job would be pretty useless. But they all work in their own little bubbles, so I have to keep everyone on track. Story 207. Civil construction. I drive by at night and see 6 people staring at another person digging a hole. Most of them are clean uniform people who I don't think have worked a hard day in their life. Story 208. OnlyFans, Instagram models, Twitch streamers, my council's MP, YouTubers, influencers, professional sports, i.e. footballers, Tory labor lip dam parties, gender therapists, musicians, PETA's managers higher-ups, adult content stars, and bed testers. All of which we can do without. They all get paid way too much, more than people that actually work hard. And half of these you don't even need a room temperature IQ to do, yet they pay more than someone working 60 hours a week, 6 days a week. Sad, really. Story 209. Investment banking. We use projections that have no basis in reality to tell managers it's a good idea to buy a company that they were already buying. Story 210. Community manager, or anyone who is solely there to bring a Google-like vibe to a workplace. Ick. Fake and forced BS in 95 of instances. If you're actually there for well-being, etc., cool. Story 211. There are no useless jobs in my experience. Most need to get done. They are most times very mundane and repetitive. So you have to love whatever it is you do, and that is the real trick, is it not? I think tennis is a great example, or ping pong. If you make it into a game, it can be exciting no matter the job you do. And living wages, well, that is all about the structures of economics, of course. An open-door policy is about getting rid of those who want those in some manner. NS. That's it for this video. Don't forget to support Vancher and my second channel, Vanchus. See you soon.